Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. We're going to have a really great discussion with 4 trailblazers in sports right now about how sports can, in this uniquely divided time in our country, we believe sports has the opportunity to bring people together to promote equality and social change. So with me today, I have 4 people who are really at the forefront of driving that vision throughout the sports industry. To my right, we have Antwon Bolden, a longtime NFL great and wide receiver, currently with the Lions. Swin, who is a WNBA, retired WNBA All-Star, and one of the most well-recognized and accomplished athletes in that league's history. We've got to my left Stephen Ross, who's the chairman of Related Companies and the owner of the Miami Dolphins and founder of the Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality. And then finally, Troy Vincent, who's a senior vice president with the NFL in charge of player engagement. And all of them have extraordinary work throughout their careers and unique contributions that they're making now and have made in the field of advocacy and using their role in sports to promote equality and social change. And I wanted to start by giving each of our participants today an opportunity to share with you a little bit about what they've been doing and the groundbreaking initiatives that they've been leading in many ways for several years, and the impact that they're already seeing. And then we'll have a discussion about where we go from here, what are our challenges and opportunities right now in this space, and what success would look like to each of our panelists. And then if we still have time, we'll open it up for a larger conversation with all of you. I want to start with Anquan. Anquan, can you tell us a little bit about the work you've done to raise the issues that you care about and using your platform as an NFL athlete to do so?
I think we're supposed to start with ladies first, right?
I'm happy to take that audible. We'll start with Swin. I think you just punted.
Absolutely, I have no problem taking the lead. So, you know, for me, my career started out not thinking about being an activist as an athlete. It started out really thinking about, how do I give back? I was raised in humble beginnings, and so everything started kind of from a nonprofit standpoint, wanting kids in my neighborhood to have a better opportunity. As I started growing in sports and going to the Olympics and winning championships and playing at the University of Connecticut, I understood the importance of athletes having a voice. And I was raised by a very strong mother and family members who always told me that as a woman, you have an opportunity to use your platform in a variety of ways. And I realized over the last few years, there was so much happening in our country. And at a time when people tend to think about athletes and say, your place is just on the field and you shouldn't have an opinion, I was the complete opposite. And I think in the WNBA, the one thing that happened with our league last year was that there was a lot of uprising. I think there was a time when the country was just really trying to figure out what exactly is going on and how can we bring awareness, but at the same time take that awareness and move it to policy, move it to the next chapter of helping in the communities. And I just really felt like because I had worked in that space and I had learned from a number of people from a grassroots standpoint that I wanted to be more of a leader. And so I try to take on that role. But it all stems for me from the nonprofit realm of wanting to give back to kids. And just to share with you all, right now, there are so many young kids that look at athletes as superstars. They look at us as role models for what we do as far as games and winning championships. But I wanted to be known as somebody that did more and wanted to give them opportunity to see who I was as an individual. And so that's why I think it's so important that we continue the work and we continue to do the things off the court and pursue those things just as well as we do on the court with our sports.
I want to come back to ask you about some of the female athletes that you're working with now who've done such extraordinary work on and off the court and how they in many ways have been leading the way, leading the conversation. But I'll turn to Stephen next and ask you about Rise, your decision to start it and your vision.
Well, I like Swin. I didn't really start as an activist. It was an area that really I was concerned about always, but didn't feel I could have a strong voice in it until something happened in Miami. We had, many of you might have read about the bullying incident we had in Miami. It was on the front page of all the newspapers for about 2 months or so. And when I really looked into it, I could see that racism was part of it. I grew up in Detroit, and at the same time went back to Detroit, and I saw what had happened to that city and how racism had really destroyed Detroit. And so it really bothered me, and I started thinking about it, and I really believe that in life I take the position that if you can really make a difference and you can do something, you should step up and do it. And owning the Miami Dolphins, which was very high profile, and with the idea of, I kind of owned that space. When people would ever talk about bullying incidents, they'd always be speaking about the Miami Dolphins and racism in sports. So I then thought about what I could do in really trying to have an impact on something, and came up with the idea of creating this nonprofit using sports to really create change. And the reason for that is, if you look at sports today, sports is really the one place in the world today where there is equality. And also that all athletes, no matter what age you are, you're a role model to the other students or your peers. And the fact is that it is the common denominator in the world. And so to take sports and to use that to create change, dealing strictly with racism. So RISE is really, it's one goal, and that is to deal with the race issue, because it's the elephant always in the room that people don't want to talk about, and it's the one thing in America I think we have to get over, and we really have to break down a lot of the barriers that exist today. And so what I've done is I went out, and knowing a lot of the commissioners in sports, I approached every league, and I got the commissioner of every sport in this country, from baseball, basketball, hockey, certainly the NFL, soccer, and then went on to golf, tennis, the NCAA, women's track, and a couple others. And at the same time went and spoke with and got the heads of all the sports department of all the 5 networks to join the board. So all those people are on our board, and the idea there is to use sports to create it. Now, this is not another black type of nonprofit, because the discrimination really comes from what am I supposed to call Caucasians? Caucasians. Troy and I have had much discussion. How do you really, what terminology to use?
Without offending anybody. That's
right.
important.
That's right. So the idea is for them to really get involved as that type of people, and showing how sports, black and white, work together with equality, respect for each other, and how we could really apply that to America in dealing with the issue and trying to eliminate it. Now, this is obviously going to take a long period of time, and we could talk for a lot of issues, but this is what we're focused on in RISE. And fortunately, we have Jocelyn Benson really as our executive director, who's phenomenal. And so we're all working together, and we're about 18 months into this, and I think we're making a real impact at this point in time, and I think it's really something very exciting.
And Troy, from the league standpoint, from the league level, how do you see the opportunities to use the unifier that sports is to unify people around improving race relations?
Well, it's been interesting the last, I want to say 18 months. Not even 18 months, just going back to the Miami Dolphins situation there, which we all learned from. Sitting where I sit, we have an opportunity to see what's happening in all sports. And today we consider ourselves a leader in that sports entertainment business. And when we see challenges that arise, we get a chance to look and learn from mistakes. We learned a lot from the Jonathan Martin situation. We learned a lot from a year ago with the Kaepernick situation. This isn't new. It's just a new generation, and with the eyeballs, with social media, there's just different outlets and ways to amplify these messages. But we saw what we saw in the last 24 months, back in the Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that whole era, and even before then. We feel like there's an opportunity to really unify people. On Sunday, no one wants to mix politics as we would say, Sunday, Mondays, and Thursdays. They want to come out and enjoy their sport. It's the way they can it's a time of week where they can get away. But we also think it's a tremendous opportunity for us to bring people together. Maybe unify groups that normally wouldn't talk, bring communities together, and we've seen that over the last year with the help of Raj and Steve, and we would say is a pioneer in this space. He's been a pleasure to work with, someone that hadn't skated around the issue, hits it head on, and we've used many of his models and share those best practices with other clubs to say, here are ways, these are some things that Rise have shared with us that you may be able to incorporate in Seattle or Boston or Philadelphia. So that's how we look at it. We're learning from all of the sports leagues what they're doing. And then frankly, the National Football League and the NBA, when the majority of the athletes, the vast majority, 75% plus, are African American males. So some of the situations that we're seeing is the product, the men that represent the majority of your playing field and your playing surfaces, they have a right to talk, and they have a platform. And I think it's upon us as a league, owners, coaches, we can just get behind our players and really take a deeper dive into what's going on in their lives to better help communities, and doing it in the right manner.
And Anquan, you've really done a lot to lead the way on advocating for policy changes in the federal level on criminal justice reform. I'd love to have you share with everyone a little bit more about your connection of your role as an athlete to your opportunities and maybe even responsibility to speak out and tell the stories that often aren't told.
Yeah, I guess for me, I started out as well in a not-for-profit. I come from a less fortunate area where there's not a lot of opportunity. So initially, I started out with my foundation, geared around helping underprivileged, with a large component around education. Me and my wife, we've been doing it for 14 years now. So, but for me, it took a turn. I had an opportunity, it's probably about 6 years ago. I was reading an article about a drought that was going on in Ethiopia. And I got in contact with an organization that was doing work in Ethiopia. And instead of just donating money, I asked, could I go along with them and see the type of work that they were doing? Because I wanted to see exactly where my money was going. And they invited me along. And I invited, a couple more players along with me. Had a chance to go over and see firsthand the work that they were doing. And had a chance to go to Capitol Hill and advocate on behalf of mining laws and things like that. So I had a chance to see how that part worked. And then fast forward to, I would say it was about 2 years ago, I had a cousin who was killed by an off-duty officer. My cousin was coming home from a concert. He played in a band. He was the drummer for the band, and his car broke down on the side of the highway. And while he was on the phone with roadside assistance, a cop pulled up and shot him 3 times. So, wow. And this was around the whole time where, young black males were losing their lives at the hands of police officers. And it affects you to hear about it every day. But I think when it hits that close to home, it affects you in a different way. So it's no longer I'm just seeing it on TV or it happened in Texas or it happened in California. No, it hit right at home. And for me, I could no longer sit on the sidelines and not be a participant in it. And, from there started my advocacy work for criminal justice reform. So.
I'm curious, I think, one thing Troy said, and I think what both of your stories illustrate is, this marriage of athletes and advocating for equality didn't start, last August when Kaepernick took a knee. It's been going on for a long time, and I'm wondering if you've seen any changes over the past year, though, as there's perhaps been a lot of conversation around the role of athletes advocating for change? Have you seen your opportunities increase or change in any way over the past year? Of course, a lot of things a lot of changes have occurred at the national level in the past year as well, which I imagine affected as well. But I'm just curious if things are accelerating, if you see more opportunities now perhaps than before, or has the work remained the work?
You want to go ahead?
You know, I would say this. I would say that the awareness that whether it's social media, whether it's opportunity for us to connect with people not only here but all around the world. I think if you look at where our country is right now, when I've gone to a march or I've been at a rally, the diversity that is there lets you know that people are more aware. The next step of that, and I think for us, is how do you change that awareness to the policy? And that's when it has to be at the local level with officials. That's when athletes that I know, even in the WNBA, the NBA, that are taking meetings with your local officials, people that can affect change. And I think it has to start there. But first of all, we as a country have to address the issue. That's the biggest thing, is that, you know, day to day we can live in a reality and we go to work and we're on this grind, each and every one of us that are in here. But there are people that you have to care about that are in your community, whether you live on the East Coast, the West Coast, around the world, that are affected, that are hurting. And like Anquan, I'll say, like, I'm sitting here right now today, and part of where I started in the nonprofit realm with my nonprofit and charity, we have a youth basketball league. I got a call Monday that a 14-year-old that played in our youth basketball league was shot and killed in the chest by gun violence. My mother is at the wake tonight. So we don't just come and talk about these things. We live them day to day. We're burying a 14-year-old kid tomorrow that had his whole life ahead of him. There are a number of things that are happening, and we can put on blinders and say, you know what, it's not happening in my community. My kids live in a great community, in a good school district, but that's not reality. Like, it's happening everywhere, and we just have to pay more attention and start turning our awareness into policy.
Troy, Stephen, you're leaders in the sports industry as well. Where do you see the leadership coming from in advancing these types of changes that we've been talking about? Where do you, where is leadership missing?
Well, I mean, I think when I first approached the sports leagues, you know, I don't think they weren't taking a leadership position. One, if they did, it would be indicating that they had a problem. And as I approached them, I said, you don't have a problem, we all have a problem. And so I think when they see that they're unified together to address the problem, we can then start dealing with the problem and making change. But I think left to their own devices, I don't think they would ever approach it head on and really tackle that problem. But I think together, I think we can have an impact, sports, the leaders, you know, the commissioners and everything. And I think when we at the board meetings, which they're either in attendance or they have a representative, and I see them working together and understanding them, because every league, you know, recognizes that America has a problem and they want to have an impact in making this country, you know, great, you know, and eliminating that. And you got to start somewhere. So I think, you know, for the first time, you can really see the sports teams and the leagues. It's more the league level than at the team level, unfortunately. But I think that the leagues recognize it, and I think that you'll start seeing them to be a lot more proactive with time. What do you think, Troy?
Well, I would say the league also, another way as we think about it, is the league has an opportunity to amplify. But frankly, the young people are telling us what we're going to do. And when you look at our young people, Generation Z and the millennials, they're telling us. They speak out about whether it's global warming. They speak out about all kind of social issues. My kids that are 11, twins are 11, 17, and 21, they talk about issues. I was just sexual assault and domestic violence. But my children talk about all kind of issues. And I think the young people are telling us, you know, where they want us to be. And frankly, it's the owners, you look at the owners level in the sports leagues, hey, fan engagement is important. And when your fans tell you, the people who are sitting in the seats, who are buying the subscriptions, when they tell you what's important to them, and oftentimes is what's important to them is they want to take a deeper dive into the athletes that they follow, their heroes. We want to know a little bit more about them, what makes them tick, what makes her tick. So I think, you know, let's keep in mind that the young people are telling us what's important to them and what they want us to speak on.
But I think also today what you're seeing the athletes themselves wanting to, for the first time, I think, be much more active and stepping up and being vocal about it. And I think, you know, as an owner, I encourage that because I think it's good for everybody. And I mean, I think till that happens, you know, we really have to encourage the athletes, you know, not just the black athletes, the African American athletes, but all the athletes, because they, like as I say, you know, with them, you win together in sports. And that's the approach that we have to have. We're all in this together, and we know how to, they know how to treat each other. And that's what you love to see society look like.
Yeah, and I want to come back to how leagues and owners and even coaches can be supportive of players engaging in advocacy. But
yeah, I just wanted to jump in there because right now, in my new position after I retired last year, I went into the front office as Director of Franchise Development for the New York Liberty, and I thought the support that we got from our team really helped us whenever we took a stand last year. All of our players, black, white, Hispanic, foreign players that we had, all stood together. Some differences, Democrats, Republicans, independents, some that couldn't vote, and just, you know, but all had conversations, but stood together for the cause of what it was. And I think when I looked around, and we questioned, I have friends in the NFL, NBA, NHL, and I questioned and I said, why aren't more teams unified? If we can be unified in the locker room, why aren't we unified when you're standing together for a cause? It's so important to a majority of the people that look like each other in the locker room. Why is that not important? Why are you not having those conversations? And I challenged some of my male counterparts. We did. But because of what the WNBA did last summer, and all of the women stood up and said, we'll take fines for wearing these shirts. We'll take fines for articulating our point of views or standing up for what matters. The league then backed away and said, we need to reevaluate and take a different position. The NBA went into the season with a game plan. The NBA and the union got together, and when you realize, whether it's in sports or business, your bottom line can be affected because your athletes or your fans have a problem, that's when you start seeing that people are taking things a lot more serious. I'm an ambassador for the NBA for social responsibility. So I saw the work from the beginning of the season to now that we had to put in grassroots programs with each of our teams and really trying to help them implement. And a lot of it was because of the work that Rise was doing and bringing that research to the table and letting us say, here are the facts. Now, what are you going to do about it? You're going to put your money into it and try to invest to help these communities and bridge that gap.
how have your fans been reacting, or how do your fans react to your activism? Are they supportive? Are they
on social media
sharing?
or
What's been, because I think there's, I mean, in the conversations I've had, there's all these, I mean, we do a lot of work to also engage fans in taking a pledge to stand up against racism and racial harassment of any kind, and we want to encourage fans to be supportive of our athletes who are leading the way. And I'm just curious, from your standpoint, do you feel, have you been able to work with fans, get feedback from fans? Has it impacted your work at all?
Yeah, I think the support has been positive for the most part. I mean, you always have those type people out there, but for me, those are the ones that I don't pay attention to, because if you can't get behind a cause like this, something's wrong with you. I mean, if you don't want to see everybody working together, getting along, something's wrong with you. But for the most part, I think the fans have been supportive. Everybody that I've heard from say they support what we do, has been more than inspired by what we're doing, and they continue to push us to continue to do even more work.
I think I've been very open. Like, I like the fact when intellectually I can be challenged on opinions and thoughts, but when somebody's just giving different insults. There's no need for me to engage with that. I like to engage with people who possibly could have a difference of opinion, and let's talk about it. Let's find some common ground. And I think when people just question your patriotism, or you don't believe in police officers, and you don't support this, that really is just cutting away and just putting us on separate sides. And for somebody whose dad has served this country for 20 plus years, brother, cousins, whose godmother works for the Attorney General, it's really hard to kind of argue me on the basis that I don't support the people that serve and protect us.
I think it's a delicate balance. And, I mean, just use the NFL. We saw some clubs who didn't have issues in their local community, and you had others that were right in. If you're in Baltimore, you see it every day. It's war zone. But if you're in some other areas of our country, where I'll just say Green Bay, I'm just using them as an example. And really, there's 32 different ways in 32 cities. Not that they can't get around the issue, but you have to make it make sense to them. And then if it's not organized, it gets out of control, the messages are off, and it creates more turmoil. So it's a real delicate balance of trying to, I never forget talking to the Jones family in Dallas, and around their situation, and the work that Stephen was doing in Miami, and in Seattle with Coach Carroll. Every city was its own little institution and had its own challenges, resources, and networks. So as we kind of move forward and you think about the subject, every city, every organization, every community has its own challenges, resources, and networks. And you have to be delicate. There's a delicate balance of, I got it all. So I got the hate mail, I got from the season ticket holders, I got the Caps jersey, sent to me in the mail, FedEx, burned up. I got the letters from military, our servicemen and women about their displeasure. I got it all. And frankly, I made those calls back. Those who had expressed hate, and just so that they can understand there's a difference. Because there just wasn't a complete understanding of what the other person was living through, or what those dynamics that both Swin and Q has spoke about. And I just took on Sunday, before the 1 o'clock kickoff, I'm just on the phone and I'm calling. And it's a rant. And then I can say, Mrs. Johnson, if you can just let me explain to you why our players did this, or why such and such said this. About 10 to 15 minutes later, there's at least some conflict resolution where we've kind of, okay, I understand. So it's a delicate balance is what I would say, as we continue to keep moving forward.
Yeah, one of the things we've seen with Rise this year as well is that, frankly, that Kaepernick taking a knee garnered a lot of attention to the work that athletes have been doing for a long time. And in some ways gave us an opportunity to demonstrate how athletes can bring people together to have conversations across different perspectives and perhaps reach some common ground.
That's true, but I got to tell you, there's a minority, I would like to think, a small minority, but I think it's probably way too large, that really reacted against the protest. I got the letters I got, the amount of people that canceled their season tickets. We had 3 players that took a knee during the national anthem as a protest, and I actually encouraged them to, what they felt, to do what they felt. I know a lot of owners precluded their players from doing that, and I just think that's not America, And
what was the impact you saw on your team when they knew they had your support? The players knew, whether they took a knee or not, that you were behind.
I think most of them didn't want to get involved in it themselves during a game. They wanted to focus on the game. And I think probably most of the coaches encouraged them to focus on the game. At the same standpoint, there were several that did. And I spoke to make sure that they wouldn't be kind of looked at for, unfavorably for having done that, because I encouraged it, And I think coaches are going to react in different ways, because they're about winning the football games, from that perspective. But I thought it was really good, because you have to start a conversation. Nobody really wants to have the conversation, and the idea is that the publicity it's getting is causing people to think about it, and And then we had, as you know, these sessions with the, that they gave tailgates for the military, the press, to express the reasons why they were doing it, because it's personal to every player and their reactions. And so I think once the press especially learned of what the players were doing and expressing their feelings, they were a lot more supportive. And I think that's important that get out there. But I mean, to say that this problem doesn't exist and it's only a small, a percentage of the people, that is not the case. I mean, we're just in the beginning of really dealing with this issue. And it's something that, hey, it's discrimination and this has gone on for hundreds of years in this country. So you're not going to eliminate it overnight, and it's going to be a long time, but we got to start.
Well, on that note, one of the things that we work to define or struggle even to define at Rise is what success looks like. What would impact look like? And we certainly see so many athletes doing really unique and important work in various different ways across the leagues. But we're often given the question of, what would success look like? So I want to ask that to everyone on our panel. As you look at the contribution that you're working to make in your sport and today and in the past and in the future, what does success look like? Who wants to start?
Well, I would say for me, success step one was what's occurring this year. Last year, I felt the WNBA and the New York Liberty, our team, had awareness, and we were able to bring all of the issues to the table. We blacked out a media day after a game and refused to talk to media, and we only wanted to answer questions about why Black Lives Matter was happening, why there's police brutality was happening, why we need to bridge the gap, why we need to do X, Y, and Z. And so we got a lot of media attention from that. So we came back this year, and all our players said, listen, we're overseas playing, but when we come back, we need to hit the ground running. We want to talk to the right people. We want to make sure we're in the community. So what we've done is set up opportunities throughout this season, this summer, for them to engage in those opportunities. And that's where it comes back to, and I think Mr. Ross alluded to this, is that it starts with the franchises as well, not just on the league level. The league level is going to do their part, but then you have to implement at the team level, and that's what we're focused on right now. And for me, on a personal level, and just being on the NBA side as an ambassador, the goal was to have every team engage in some way, shape, or form, whether it was the Utah Jazz or whether it was the Philadelphia 76ers or the New York Knicks. It didn't matter if the problem wasn't happening or visible in your city. How you were committed to having the conversations was important. And I think those are the steps that you have to take, step one, and then you move that to the next step of how do we help with policy. So we're taking baby steps, but I don't think it's gonna change overnight, but you can do your part. And if each and every one of us in this room and on this panel are doing that every day, trying to make it better for our country, then I think we'll see results.
Anquan.
I agree. I think just getting everybody on the same page would definitely be a win. I'm the type of person that I'm all in whenever I'm involved in something, and I like to see those around me with the same commitment. And I think that's how you get things not only moving, but things become a lot better then. For me, this isn't something that I'm doing just because I'm playing right now. Even when I'm done with the game of football, this work is something that I will continue to pursue. Like Mr. Ross said, it didn't happen overnight. So the solution doesn't happen overnight. It's something that we have to continue to chomp at. I mean, there will be new obstacles that arrive 5 years from now. But it's something that we have to continue to be that, and I think that's the only way that you can get a win. It's not just getting a conversation started. Where do you go from there? You go from the conversation to the advocacy work. Like she said, local level, state level, and then federal. I mean, you continue to chomp at the bits. I mean, I've learned that there isn't just one answer. I mean, you have to hit this thing from a lot of different angles. And I think we'll all see that once we continue to work at it. But I think getting everybody on the same page and just continue to chomp at it, we'll see results.
Troy, what does success look like to you in this work?
Well, for me, it starts at home. Me and my wife continue to keep raising our kids up in love, in godly love. Today, we're battling with our kids growing up hating someone that they don't know, but because it's so in your face, what we see. I want you to have a love and some level of respect for the men and women that serve our country, the men and women that protect our communities, and what they see is opposite. So coming home and have to de-escalate that visual or those conversations at home, success at home, it begins at home for me. And then corporately, creating safe spaces. All 32 clubs are engaged in safe spaces to have real conversation with the men that want to have conversation in whatever particular area they would like to engage in. And seeing that happen amongst all 32 clubs. Frankly, success looks like all engaging in best practices. With RISE, we've seen given us some great examples over the last year. Rather than 16 teams participating, all 32, engaging in real conversation with local community, being a real bridge builder. That's what success would look like for me over the next year.
Stephen, for RISE, what would it take for you to say this work is successful?
Well, I mean, this is not a simple thing to say success. I mean, we've had discrimination has held back our country. I've looked at it as being one of the major issues of this country that people don't want to discuss. And how do we eliminate that discrimination so that everybody gets an equal opportunity and are treated with respect and have the same kind of, I would say opportunities that everybody else has, And so how do you, in using sports to do that, and I look at it as an educational thing. And it starts when someone, really, you're not born with prejudice. Unfortunately, it's an acquired habit too often. And so how do you eliminate it? Mostly, I would say, you learn and you get it from your parents. And so you have to deal as I look at it with athletes, the respect they have in the locker rooms for each other and how they work together. And if society could work that way, it would be great. I mean, that's an idealistic goal, but we have to strive for something. And so I think it's, through education and dealing with the youth when they first start playing organized sports. And since they're not going to get it from their parents, the coach is very important. So we have to really organize, and that's what RISE is about. It's about education and dealing with it, throughout all society. And we've seen, as you know, through the programs, the pilot programs that we've set up for education that we've done in Michigan with several schools, both all African American, mixed, in an all-white school, and how the impact has had on those athletes. We have set up a pilot program of 10 weeks, and actually several of the universities in the state of Michigan are requiring all athletes to take the course, as you well know. But I think till we can start really having athletes treating each other, and that will then spill over to the rest of society, that is going to take a long period of time. But we got to start, because we certainly haven't made enough strides, or we wouldn't be talking about these issues today.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, I have one other point before. We talk about success, but the real power comes when all of the sports leagues, when you get the athletes, and frankly, I'm curious about who are those athletes. When you start crossing the line, that's where the power comes in. When you get basketball, track, hockey, golf, tennis, that's the real power. That's the global power.
Letting the children see that, and that they apply that in their life, in the way they treat people. That's what we need, the crossover.
Swin and Anquan, have you seen, or do you see, and I'm going to open up to questions for the audience next, but I want to ask, have you seen your colleagues either in other leagues, and you talked, Swin, a little bit about the conversations you've had with other athletes. Do you see athletes or colleagues of yours who would speak out but for something, perhaps wanting more information or more, and if so, what is that thing that you think might get more of your colleagues to be engaged or speaking out on the issues they care about?
Well, I think one of the things for me that really helped is that I felt I've had these conversations since I was younger. I spent 15 years playing in the WNBA, but also being on the executive committee with the union. And I think Troy made a good point that it's about the leagues coming together, but I also think it's about the most important unions. When the league and the unions are aligned, it really helps create that space even for the players. But what we did, we educated. We had a player, and I'll never forget it, from Australia who was basically a rookie making a minimum salary, and everyone else on the team, they were willing to take the hit for the fine that was going to come from the WNBA. And she basically said, I want to stand with you, but I can't afford this. Like, I need to have the money. And our veterans stepped up and said, don't worry about it, I'll pay that. That's how you do things. That's how we are in sports, in our locker room. And I only can speak for our locker room, and obviously I had conversations with other players, but that to me was one of the most powerful things, and why it got so much attention, because it was everyone. It wasn't just they're saying, oh, the black players are over here and they're doing this protest. No, it was everyone. Even our international players, we gave them information so that they could understand. They watched videos online and watching people get shot and killed like every other athlete. And I think for the WNBA, that's what was so powerful.
Yeah, I think there has been some hesitancy on some guys' behalf. And I think there's a number of different reasons why.
Yeah.
Some guys don't know how to. I get a lot of questions of how to go about advocating. Some guys don't even know how to start a foundation. So I think there's that I don't know how to. There's also the fact of some guys want to speak out but don't want to say the wrong thing. Like, I have some of my Caucasian friends would love to, but don't want to step out and offend someone. So that's one of the things. And then there's also I don't want to lose my job. Like, this is how I feed my family. I don't want to rub the higher ups the wrong way. So I'm gonna play it safe, do my job, and keep my mouth shut.
And not only the job, let's just even take it a step further. I got the phone call from my agent and was like, Swin, I love what you're doing, the passion, but understand, as you're taking this step out and you're doing advocacy, some of your sponsors or people may not be happy with that.
True.
So at the end of the day, it always goes back to the bottom line. It could be your job, it could be a sacrifice of money with your sponsors. As an athlete, we have to face that reality regardless whenever you speak out, understanding what the consequences and repercussions may be of that.
Do you see any way to overcome that particular?
I don't know if it's possible. I think that if you have a moral compass and you feel that that's something that you have to stand on and be principled about, you look at what Colin's doing, what happened last year, and now he doesn't have a job. And a lot of people look at that and say, well, he doesn't have a job because he did this. And then other people will say, well, he's not that good, he can't play. And then you start all the comparisons and back and forth. You'll never know the overarching reason. But at the end of the day, if he's comfortable with his decision and happy where he is, then that's what I think every individual athlete has to be comfortable with. So I can't say there's a right or wrong
At the same time, I think his jersey has sold more than any other jersey.
I think his jersey may have sold.
Just been named one of Time's most 100 influential.
I think because there was a moment in a movement, and I think that people, what he was doing, and the reason why he was doing it resonated with a lot of people. And it wasn't just people in the African American community, I think around the country. And it was a moment and it was a movement. And so people wanted to support that. And it wasn't just people, the fans, it was military people also. There were some that didn't support it, there were some that did. But that shows the beauty and diversity of our country. It started a conversation.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from the audience.
Yeah, I'm just curious, and this question for all of you. I know the media has to cover players and teams and owners and...
Could you just stand up and introduce yourself real quick? Before you, yeah, thanks.
Hi, I'm Bill Desser, JP Morgan. I know, the media needs to cover players and teams and owners and leagues too, and I'm just curious whether you think the media is doing a good enough job covering philanthropy that you're all doing, or good jobs you're doing on discrimination and good acts, are you getting the coverage that you think you need?
That part doesn't sell. I mean,
No.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
No, I mean, okay, excuse me.
Go ahead,
Go on.
Anquan, and then we'll go over to Steve.
You have to look at when you talk about the media coverage and what they're covering what people want to hear, what people want to see, what people want to read. So if the media isn't doing a good enough job, we have to look at society, because the work that we're doing in the communities, the philanthropic work that we're doing, they're not getting the clicks because of those. That's because people aren't reading about it, or people aren't attracted to that. Now you let a guy get arrested and see how many hits or clicks that same media outlet wrote about the philanthropic work that didn't get the same kind of notoriety. You'll see the kind of notoriety that they get when somebody does something on the other side of the law. And that's because of how society is set up. And I mean, that's just being honest.
Steven?
I mean, the press that covers sports, or the sports writers, they really deal with the X's and O's. They don't really get into the social issues and don't really comment upon them. When you have an issue, it then goes to the front page, and different writers then pick up on that issue. So you're not going to hear a lot or read a lot in the press, I don't believe, in terms of the things and what the players are doing, the involvement of the players, and the good things they're doing. Because, like Anquan says, one, that doesn't sell newspapers, and it's not really, it's really above the pay grade of the writers who are writing.
I think ESPN, I mean, when they're doing a 30 on 30.
Those are the good, I mean,
Yeah.
ESPN, but you were talking about writers. Now, on television, with the media, I mean, ESPN is doing a series which is great, I mean, and I know working with all the networks and the involvement they have with us and Rise, and they really want to participate and really understanding the importance of sports and to show the good aspects of it. And so I think you will see a lot more of that going forward, because they are active participants, from that standpoint.
Yes, here in front.
Do I just?
Yeah, please stand, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Hillary Lautenberg. I work with RFG Financial. I want to give a counterpoint to your comments as well as yours in terms of the media and whether this sells. I'm going to date myself, but I recall back a long time ago when Isaiah Thomas was playing for Detroit and they came in to play the Lakers, and the front page of the sports page of the LA Times had a big article on how Isaiah Thomas talked about how incredibly lucky he felt that he was paid to do what he loved, and how a lot of the people he knew back in Detroit were still playing the game but not getting anywhere near either the success or the opportunities that he had, and how much so part of what his motivation was to go back and do a lot for his community. And that had a huge impact on me and as a fan. And I think it's not about whether you can say that the people aren't interested and these kind of stories don't sell, but I think it's about how the media sells them. I think the media can absolutely make these points, and they can have a profound impact on our communities by how what you're doing inspires, is an inspiration to all children, not only Black, but white, Latina, and I think it's about how the media sells it.
So your question.
And I think, well, I actually want to have another question, but I really think that part of what you ought to be, I would hope you would be doing, is helping the media realize the impact that they can have on our communities by telling your stories. But the
Okay,
question,
we'll react to that because we've got a bunch of questions in the queue.
Yeah.
So we'll react to
I
go
guess
ahead, Swin.
my comment just would be for the media, and I also, working on the media side in television, the media needs to work on their diversity as well, because like business and anything else, when you have people in the room that come from different backgrounds culturally and understanding, then you get some of those stories because you draw on different areas. So maybe that's more of the question of how diversified is the media that's reporting on the different teams.
Our question over here.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Dewan Wiltshire, U.S. Navy. Thank you all for addressing the elephant in the room. I mean, social responsibility is not an easy thing to do. So first of all, thank you for that. The question is, if it's so difficult to take a stand for the players, particularly because they have so much to lose, I guess the question for you, Mr. Ross, comes first is why don't the higher echelon of those who are paying the athletes provide the top cover so that they can have the voice to speak? Or even, why don't people come on board to allow them that top cover?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody else. Obviously, I believe in what you're saying, and I think it's incumbent upon the owners, of what they feel is important to them, and how they really look at it, and so I think every owner is different. I mean, Troy, who deals with them, in the league, he can tell you,
Again, all 32 have a different take on it.
But I'll also say, from my observation, what I've seen this year, particularly as the conversation has increased, is that more teams, more owners, and more coaches have been supportive, and more athletes are engaging.
No, what was really interesting, I can talk about the league meeting. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, go for it, man.
It was a confidential session, but go ahead.
No, so
Matter
we
of fact,
talked
it was a
about
private session.
What, it was a private session?
Yeah, but go ahead.
Okay. He's my boss.
Oh, Lord. Here we go.
Well, we talked about it for the first time in any league meeting and dealt with this issue with the owners, the coach, and the general manager. And it was incredible. I think it really was surprising. I think it was surprising to you.
It was powerful.
It was powerful how dealing with the issue, talking about it, and how the owners, a number of the owners, I can't say all the owners, got behind it and said, hey, and came up to me after, thanking me and wanting to get involved. So I think this is a kind of a new movement, and hopefully you'll see a lot more of it. But it is something that I think that people are, I think the owners are understanding. Certainly the coaches and general managers do. So, that's part of what we're trying to do with Rise.
I agree.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mohammed Mansour from Aspire Food Group. Just a question about what is being done on an institutional level to, on the one hand, frankly, educate the fans about the importance of humanizing the athletes and the fact that the athletes are more than just, performing sports, but that they have their own views, they have their own values, etc. What is being done at the level of the athletes themselves to, given that many of them don't actually have a voice or don't know that they can have one, or etc., how do you empower the athletes themselves to develop that? And then finally, on the ownership level, and maybe Mr. Ross, you can comment on this, is there room to frankly open up ownership to create more diversity within ownership itself, so that it's more reflective of the varied
So lots of questions there unpacked. What is being done to get fan support? What's being done to engage athletes in support and owners as well, and recognizing that perhaps racial and gender diversity among owners may have an impact.
I can speak for athletes. I think it's important that those of us that have been involved educate those that are coming up behind us, and that's what we've been trying to do. We've been trying to educate guys on just how big their platform is and just how powerful their voice is. Because to be honest with you, I didn't know how far my reach was when I first entered the NFL. It wasn't until I got involved with Oxfam and had a chance to go to Capitol Hill and speak before senators and congressmen that I understood just how powerful my voice was as an athlete. I still looked at myself as a young kid from Pahokee, Florida, not understanding that people really wanted to hear what I had to say. Just as an example, this same organization that I was working with for 2 years tried to get a meeting on Capitol Hill, tried to testify before Congress. I joined this organization, and 2 weeks later, we were testifying before Congress. So that in itself showed me just how powerful an athlete's voice is and just how far our reach is. So for myself, I'm just trying to educate my fellow athletes on just how much power they possess.
And briefly on the institution side of it, from the WNBA side, the NBA side, what we really have done is just focused on educating our teams, educating our players. For instance, this summer with the New York Liberty, we're going to have a game that's only focused on social responsibility, and we'll be working along with Rise to educate our fans that are coming into our building. So before the game, halftime, after the game, we'll be not only giving information, we'll have activations on our concourse so that there's touch points for them to learn more about why our players have done the things that they've done, the stances, their positions, and then you move on from there. So not only grassroots level conversations with local, but also making sure we can use our game and our excitement around it to really bring that education piece.
Yeah, and what we've really seen is this is about leadership, that whether it's sports leading through athletes, through owners, through the leagues, and leadership, particularly on these issues, means not when you start leading, it by definition means not everyone's there with you, but through leadership you can lead the way to change. And so I think we're seeing the industry being less reactive and more proactive, and using and harnessing the goodwill that it provides to do good beyond sport.
I would say,
Go ahead, Joy.
the league and the clubs have to do a better, they have to be intentional about humanizing the athlete. That's one where you put your efforts, you put a plan together, because the athletes are going to give you all the content, all of the stories. They're doing the work, not just the athletes. You got your front office personnel, even your owners are doing the work. We just have to put the plan together to integrate those things and show that's what the fans want. That's what the fans are asking for. We've just chosen in the past to lead and take the fans in a different direction, but we could do a much, much better job of humanizing the athlete by working together.
I think you'll see a lot more of the athletes as well as the owners participating and involved in this, I think through Rise, because it gives them an organization to work together across, multi-sports. And so I think that we can see it happening. I know when the players were allowed to put some type of logo or charity on their shoes, and a number of them use Rise as, and it was very visible. Both basketball players as well as football players have done that, and I think this is just something that was inspiring the other athletes to step forward, and I think that's a good sign.
We have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
It's Jenny Santee, and I'm a philanthropy advisor. I've worked a lot with celebrity activists and have seen that one of the challenges that they face is the reality of the cynicism of the public. Whether they're famous for their work in sports, whether they're singers, movie stars, etc. How do you get around this reality of public cynicism, people thinking that artists, athletes are only doing their philanthropy to get PR?
I can speak to that directly. The problem is that people are not dumb. And so if you genuinely are not connected to whatever you're talking about, whatever you're representing, that will show through. And I think as an athlete, one of the things I even tell younger players and people that I've mentored is that be genuine in what you represent. I've never been connected to a sponsor, to anything that doesn't stand for what I feel that I would want to represent as a brand myself. And so I think that's very important, is being authentic.
Any other thoughts? Closing out?
No, but it was just something that came up, and I'll just share this real quickly. So we had draft last weekend, and Jim Brown, he came and spoke to the prospects, and we had active lunch and retired lunch. And it was one thing he said. He was sitting in the back of the room. We were talking about a couple issues, and he just threw this grenade in the room, just threw it in the room. And this is what he shared with the young athletes. He said, don't feed into the stereotype. And he didn't say nothing else. Don't feed into the stereotype. Your actions feed into the stereotype. That kind of goes back to the question of, talk about humanizing the athlete, the philanthropical work. He just was sitting in the back of the room with his cane. He said, well, many of you all, you feed into the stereotype that for decades we've been trying to tear down, and didn't say another word.
And on that note, please join me in thanking Anquan, Swin, Stephen, and Troy for this great conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.